That's him off in the police. No F's given. Beautiful. Alright then gang, hey reviewers, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys have been well. So by the time you're seeing this one, I've basically had my 2020 BMW S1000XR for a year. And I've ridden the bike through all seasons actually, partly because I do a lot of bike filming stuff anyway, and it's just handy, but also because I wanted to, for the purpose of this review, so that I can talk you through my experiences with it without any kind of waffle, without any kind of, you know, brand power or anything. This is a real owner's review as to how I felt the bike's been and my experience with it. Let's get into it. After doing lots of extensive research, long story short, this is the kind of bike I wanted to go for. My thoughts of going for this machine were that I basically wanted something which has the power and I guess appeal of a super sport, you know, not quite a super sport maybe, but certainly a sports bike, but in a much more comfortable riding position. That's literally what I wanted, because I'm going to be using it often, you know, going between dealers and other bits, and I wanted something which is comfortable essentially, and if I wanted to go a bit crazy I can do that as well. So I chose the XR in the end, and I definitely took it for a test ride and absolutely loved it to bits, and off the back of my test ride I bought it. And obviously, yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of the bike, really loved bedding it in, and obviously getting that first service, unlocking Dynamic Pro, all the rest of it, you know. And with this video then, because I've done a full review, so if you want to know a full review of the bike, warts and all the different bits of it, I've done a proper review of it. This is a 1 year ownership review, and in it basically what I want to do is cover some of the bits that I think could do with some improvement on the bike, and then some of the bits which I think are great about the machine, just to kind of give you a bit of a balanced overview from somebody who's genuinely owned one for a while. So as I say, what I was trying to get from the start when I bought this bike was a bit of a jack of all trades, but definitely on the sporty side, and I guess let's begin with that then. So does it deliver in that respect? And definitely is the answer to that. The S1000XR, if you're not too sure about what it is, don't too much about it, yes, it's a sports tourer, but it's very much in the kind of sporty segment of that, I would say. It's not a GS, and it's not pretending to be. It's basically an S1000RR on stilts. There you go, with a slightly retuned engine. But in terms of sporty, yeah, it's great, and there's plenty of times where I've been out and, you know, I just want to go for a proper scratch around on it, and it does that so well. It's really flickable. For a bike which I think weighs 226 kg, it's really flickable, and yeah, superb fun. But also, like I've just done earlier, I just put it from the Dynamic Pro mode into road, and then I put the suspension from Dynamic into road mode as well. Hey chaps. And yeah, when you do that, this bike can suddenly turn from a, you know, a proper scratchy all-out machine to a very comfortable tourer, which is ultimately exactly what they were going for, right? And it does nail it in that respect. You know, it's very much a jack of all trades bike, and it can do those things really well. However, the comfort is one of the things where, you know, I guess it's a bit of a negative of the bike, so I want to kind of begin with that. So first of all, the general ergonomics of the bike are very good. You know, it is a set-up kind of position here, and you know, your knees are not cramped or anything like that. The spacing between, you know, your shoulders and your arms is really good, and the bars are nice and wide, so it's just a lovely position. It's not, you know, exhausting to ride in any respect at all. However, the bad point then is the seat, and yeah, I've gone on about it in a few videos now, but the seat, and you can change it out for have like an M seat, but the problem always is going to remain in that it's this kind of sculpted out seat, and you basically kind of sit in it and it kind of smishes you to the front, which for a few of us after a little while becomes a little bit uncomfortable, and there's not a lot you can do about that really. Changing different seats will never kind of really solve it. It's just a fundamental aspect of the bike, I guess. It's one of the design aspects of it. So that was fault number one. Now, as we're on it, we might as well go through some of the negatives first, and then I'll go through all the positives, and of which there are many for this bike, I can assure you. There's absolutely loads. So I guess then negative number 2, and it's not in any particular order, is fueling for the bike. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, but what I would say is I get to ride a lot of bikes, and at lower speed, certainly, even at kind of 40-50, the throttle, for whatever reason, or whatever it is, the injectors are never quite happy just to maintain a speed. Now, it might well be just my bike, and you might say, I've got an XR and you're talking rubbish, and it is absolutely brilliant. Well, that might be the case. This is my owner's review of it, okay, from my experience. But when you're trying to get a neutral position, you just want to kind of maintain your speed. With my bike, and it's definitely more at the lower speeds, it gets very jumpy and it kind of wants to go all the time. It's kind of like, go on, go on, go on. The feeling's a bit weird, and I can assure you, not every bike does that. I ride a lot of bikes, and probably of all the bikes I've ridden in the last year, this is the only one to do that, the only one. And I want to kind of demo it here. So, yeah, this is a 40, so we've got plenty of room, right? But third gear, and already she's kind of doing this. You just try and cruise along. I just wanted to maintain that speed. But she won't. She's kind of doing this every now and again. And I think if you go a little bit slower than that, again, it gets kind of worse. And it does it in first, second, third, it do it in all the gears, really. She's not just happy, just kind of maintaining her speed. So there you go. That's kind of flaw number 2 then, I guess. Flaw number 3, which is partly why I got that exhaust on it. And look, hands up in the end, am I massively happy with the exhaust by the time I finished with it? Actually, do you know what? It probably is a little bit too loud. And I didn't actually quite get the sound that I wanted out of the bike, and I'll tell you why then. So the reason why it's not great sound, and 2 is probably linked with that fueling thing that I've just spoken about, is this kind of Euro 5 and, you know, electronic flap system that they've got in the exhaust, okay? So basically below 6,000, it's between kind of 5 and 6,000 RPM. If you're below that, the exhaust flaps are basically closed, okay, or certainly restricted. You've got 2 pipes, right? So it's kind of restricted, and it's doing that for probably emissions, and it's also doing it for noise. And when you're running the standard can, basically below 6,000 RPM, you don't get much noise at all. I'm not saying you don't get anything, but you don't get much noise at all. And I kind of like to have, you know, a bit of noise, a bit of an experience on a motorbike. And I also do think, and some of you might disagree, that if you're kind of going at lower speeds, at least it lets people know you're there. If you can't really hear the exhaust and people aren't necessarily paying attention because there's a louder car going past or something, it might have a situation develop. So I think it kind of helps, right? Let me know what you think. Do you think that's nonsense or not? I mean, I won't be offended, it's your opinion at the end of the day. But I thought that because of that system, it's just too quiet and it had to be changed. I put this new exhaust on it, and yeah, she screams, but even at kind of cruising speeds, I didn't quite get the sound that I wanted. So I don't think the exhaust is great, and other manufacturers, and if you watched any of my latest videos, you'll see I actually kind of make a point about testing these things now. Even a Tracer 900, which is, you know, down on power, but it's an absolutely sublime triple engine. Had I not got out and rushed this bike, I probably would have bought one of those, or maybe a Tiger 900 Rally Pro, yeah? Because I think that would have suited me more, because those bikes have got bags more torque lower down without you having to wind the bike up loads, whereas this bike, you can pretty much twist your wrist all the way around, and unless you're pretty much in first gear, the bike takes ages to kind of get up to speed. Past 6,000, the flaps open up and away you go. She starts to sing, right? But, you know, a triple probably would have been better for me in that instance. Here's a perfect example of that fueling again, right? I just want to maintain 30 through this 30 zone. Can you see? It won't do it. It won't stay still. But it's so annoying. It's little things, but it's so annoying that it just won't play nicely. It just wants to go all the time. She's like, go on, come on, get out of this 30 zone. So anyway, there you go. Exhaust being too quiet, restrictive systems, I guess that's number 3. I don't think I've got many other negatives to say about the bike, if I'm being completely honest with you. There are certain things that I thought I probably needed and would like when buying this bike. which some of these things, let's be honest, they just turn out to be, I don't know, things that convince you to buy a bike, you know. You're like, oh, it's got all the trimmings, but half the time you don't need the stuff. You know, things like keyless ride. Look, it's handy that it's in my pocket and I can push that button, cool. But also, I was thinking about this the other day, isn't there something quite nice about putting the key in the ignition, right? And just turning it and get all the kind of lights come on, then you do the ignition. There's a thing about that, the key, right? So I kind of miss that. And do I need it? No. Would I miss it if it's gone? No, I wouldn't. Some of the other things, like I thought I'd go for the T version because again it comes with all the bells and whistles. This nav unit, I was never going to use it. I probably should have just taken it off, but yeah, it's another one of those things I just wish it wasn't there. But it's better value to get the TE version of this bike than go for the base model. So again, that's kind of a little niggle. But other than that, I don't think there's a huge amount. There is one thing which, again, it might be down to my bike. I don't think it's down to my riding, but I do think it's down to this particular bike potentially. The quick shifter is sometimes temperamental on this bike. And it's a very straightforward concept with the quick shifter. You basically have the throttle off, you know, so you're not on the gas when you want to go down. And you do it within, you know, a decent rev range. You're not just going to do it for no reason down here. Really, you want to kind of maybe be in the middle and you're kind of changing down. So that it uses the slipper clutch and all the electronics that it's got to make it work properly. And going down is never a problem. But going up, obviously you're meant to have really kind of full throttle, certainly very positive throttle to do it. And sometimes on this bike, for no particular reason, and it's normally going between like second and third maybe, so it's not first to second shift. You're pinning it, you want to go, and the bike will kind of go, ooh, and it will stop, like it can't change gear, but it actually has changed gear on here. It had something to do with, I don't know, engaging the gear potentially, or the ignition being messed with because of that quick shifter, because it physically changed on here. You physically feel the crunch when you're changing gear as well. But yeah, you kind of basically get that really weird jerkiness, and I don't like that. And as I say, I do ride a lot of different machines, and it is the only machine that I've had that on, the only machine. And it's not a one-off, it would do it a few times if you're going out pushing it. In fact, there is another negative as well. I just want to get these out of the way because I want to get onto the positive of the bike as well. Higher speed riding, I've been blessed enough to take this bike in areas where, you know, I could be unrestricted on the speed, shall we say. And at higher speeds, and it's around like the 130 mark, the bike gets a wobble on, and it shouldn't do because it's got a steering damper, right? And it's got clever electronics and clever suspension as well, which is semi-active, so all of those things should be coming into play. And I know I'm a big lump, but I can assure you with this screen I could definitely tuck in nice and easy, but it would do it at exactly the same speed pretty much every time. And admittedly, look, I didn't ship the bike in for investigation, but I've owned quite a lot of bikes, and it is the only bike that I've ever had that on where you're not doing something silly. Do you know what I mean? Like trying to wheelie at 140, or you were going 150 and then you suddenly sat bolt upright without kind of bracing yourself for it and the bike got a bit squirrely. None of that. This is just riding the bike, you know, in a straight line in a controlled environment, and it gets a wobble on every time. So yeah, bit of a weird thing, right? Again, in the comment section, let me know, have you had anything like this on your XR? Because on the forums that I'm part of and the people that I've had conversations with, lots of people have had it. And some people have dropped the suspension, they've lowered the bike. Other people have sworn by changing the screen to a different screen, fixes it. But I want to know what you think. Have you had it on your bike? Did you fix it? Let me know. Right, so let's get on to some of the positives then. And I know I've got the S1000XR variant here, so I've got pretty much all of the toys on it. Some of the cool things, right, which you get on this bike, you get cruise control, and it's a very easy system to use. In fact, I was going as far as to say the switchgear and the system on this bike and most of the modern BMWs, they're some of the very best out there. Not necessarily the best, because some of it is going to come down to your personal preference, right? But in terms of ease of use for anybody that may have never ridden this bike before. You can just jump on it and everything is kind of where you would expect it to be, and the quality and feel of all the controls and the buttons, they're all really, really good. So I would say credit to BMW and the XR. It's a really great package and it's so easy to use. Even that screen there as well, that's an absolutely awesome screen, and you know, touch of a button we can flick it into the sport mode, and it's just very slick. You know, it's a really great system, and it's just very well laid out. Okay, so you've got gear indicator, all of your main rider information and speed, and at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask for it. There is an exhaustive amount of settings and things you can tweak on the bike as well, and I have done another video on that, a dedicated deep dive, so if you want to know loads more about the bike and systems, all the rest of it, watch those videos, because I've done a whole series on this bike covering lighting, night rides, all sorts. So credit where credit is due, the controls and the system on this bike are absolutely superb, as are things like the heated grips and the way everything works. Lighting is probably the next thing, and I would say lighting on it again is superb. I've done night rides on it. I think the cornering lighting works really well. Of course, it's full LED lighting as well, all round on the bike, and yeah, it's absolutely faultless. So really like that as well. In terms of handling and ride, I've kind of already covered that a little bit earlier, but as we're on this now, it really is kind of faultless. It's great, especially if you get Dynamic Pro set up and the full dynamic ESA suspension, because you can pretty much at all times get it into a state where it's going to be either super comfortable for touring, or if you want to go full hardcore for dynamic racing mode, whack it into Dynamic Pro, dial it in, put your suspension into Pro as well, and then it stiffens everything up and it's super sporty. So then she really is great fun to kind of thrash around on. So suspension and handling, brilliant. I would say it's definitely up there with some of the best, and it's very flickable. Yeah, and it's basically just like riding an upright sports bike. It's the best way I can put it. So tick in the box for that one. In terms of looks then, because again, looks are subjective, I really like the look of this one. This being the Gen 2 bike, it was a symmetrical design at the front there of the lights. Looks a little bit like a, I don't know, a fire ant or a praying mantis or something. But you know, a great looking bike. I have to say, she's styled really well. In hindsight, I might have got the grey version potentially, or even just gone for the M Sport, because I think that's the one that I wanted deep down. But you start chucking a very large amount of money at the bike, and I already did get in the TE version, right? But yeah, let me know what you think. What do you think's your favourite colour on the bike? It'd be good to hear your thoughts. Right, next kind of thing then, brakes and braking system on the bike. Now, yeah, alright, you haven't got kind of Brembo Stylema setup on this bike. You know, they're basically like BMW branded, if you like, on this one. But the stopping power is honestly incredible. I do get to ride a few different bikes and test out the braking system on them, and I've never tested this on a track, so I can't say what it's like on a track, but road riding, absolutely faultless. I mean, once you kind of scrub the bike in a little bit as well and kind of really bed everything in, it's jaw-dropping how quickly these brakes will stop you. I promise you, at any speed, you've got loads of confidence, and the rear brake as well is also really good. So there's that kind of weird jumpiness in there. And just so you guys know as well, it was doing this exactly the same before I changed the exhaust as well. Part of me thought maybe, and it's just a slip-on ride, but I thought maybe if we kind of de-restrict it a tiny bit, just help it breathe a little bit better, it wouldn't do it. But no, alas, it was still the same. Right, so we've got national speed limit here. I just want to kind of show you a little bit something on the bike as well. So we're in seconds, 3,500 RPM. If I pin it, now you can see she picks up reasonably well, but it's such a weird bike that below 6,000 RPM, it kind of, it doesn't feel like it's got anywhere near the power that it's meant to make. So it brings me on to like another point about the bike then. A lot of people, when this bike was first launched, you know, had a bit of a bee in their bonnet about it not having the shift cam technology. And I think initially when I first got it, I was probably really thinking like, yeah, no, it doesn't need it, they're quite right, and it would have bumped the price up maybe. Or was it just a bit of a cost saving thing? I don't know. But do I think now, in hindsight, that this bike could have done with the shift cam technology? Absolutely. I think if this bike had had the shift cam technology, it would have made it so much better, and it might have fixed a few of the kind of weird, you know, quirks of the bike, like the fueling and that kind of weird hunting. I don't know, because this bike, in my opinion, is 100% happiest when you set her free and pin that throttle and above 6,000 RPM. That is when this bike is in its happiest state. If you're not kind of riding it in that region between 6 and maybe 11,000 RPM, she gets around, but it's just, you can tell it ain't happy, and it's not a bike that kind of just, it's just happy to kind of use its torque and pull along. It wants to be in that higher rev range, it wants to stretch its legs all the time, which is why maybe for me personally I would have been better off getting something like a triple, where, you know, or a twin maybe, where it's got more torque lower down, more kind of usable torque, because for a sports, you know, tourer, it's not very tourer friendly, not really. You know, there's the GS, GSA, you've got other bigger bikes like that, Multistrada, where because of their engine dynamics and makeup, they're so much better for day-to-day riding and going from A to B without having to thrash the nuts off it all the time. So look, minor gripes, I guess, really, minor gripes. What do I think? Do I think it's a great bike? I do think it's a great bike, and I think if you go into it with your eyes open, knowing that you've basically got a super sport on stilts, and it's for that kind of rider where you'll get the most enjoyment from it, in my opinion. And it probably would be an absolute animal on a track day. And there's a YouTuber by the name of Cuban Rider, and if you want to see just how good an XR can be around a track, have a look at his channel, because yeah, he puts many other bikes to shame, you know, cornering and straights as well, and he's got a highly tuned XR. So if you want to see how capable they are, check that guy out. And I guess in a way it kind of brings me to the end of this video. Like I said, I've done a proper full review, so if you want a proper review, check that video out after this one. I've done a deep dive on the system, I've done a night ride as well. This was more of a, you know, a proper real talk about ownership experience. And just talk about experience before we finish. Experience with BMW and the dealership has been absolutely second to none. You know, customer service is exceptional in my opinion. I really have had a great experience. So yeah, can't fault it there at all. Has anything gone wrong on the bike? Not a thing. No, absolutely nothing. She has been spot on. So apart from the kind of minor gripes that I've had, I can't really give any major faults to it. It's been a good experience, a very good experience. So that brings us to the end of this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wanted it to be honest, so this wasn't me just absolutely singing the praises of it. I do think it's an excellent machine, as I've said, and I think all cars, all bikes, some of them have their kind of quirks, some of them have their faults, you know. There's nothing terribly bad on this bike, and there's a lot going for it as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments section. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me, guys. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it, especially if you're kind of in that buying process and you want to find out a little bit more. So definitely let me know. And if you did enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, because that really helps me as well. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, it's free to do so, and then you get to see loads more content. And I promise you, we have got a ton of stuff coming up, an absolute ton of stuff coming up. So I just want to say thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, stay safe, have fun, and I'll see you on the next one.